Joined today by Republican House Minority Leader Patrick Neville of Castle Rock. Thank you for coming on next.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think about the idea of a supervised drug injection site going right across Colfax from the Capitol? Is that a bad idea?
It is, and it really concerns me. We have school groups that come to the Capitol, tour the Capitol, and having them walk by such a site is really concerning.
Is there a good place in Denver to put a supervised injection site?
I don't think there is. I think it's a bad idea. I think this is the equivalent of basically having a separate lane for those who choose to drink and drive. I think it's a horrendous idea. I think the statistics we've seen in Vancouver show that it's not helped the situation. And my kind of call to action here is maybe we should take a legislative trip and actually go see it in its works before we make such a rash decision.
And what do you think that your fellow legislators don't understand about the idea? We've seen these sites in Canada and Australia and in Europe, and right now it appears that the research is pretty mixed and pretty inconclusive because you've got the sites that come in, you've got drugs that come and go. What would you hope to learn and hope to impress upon your fellow legislators?
Well, to actually see the sites in work. I mean, in Vancouver, this started out with one site. Now I think we're up to almost 7. So it's only increased the demand for such a sites. And I think right now people are saying, well, maybe it's a good idea as long as it's not in my area. But then you're going to put this on someone else's area, and I think it's a bad idea for Colorado.
What if that area already has open-air drug use? One thing that we know about these sites is that people don't come from afar to use them. It's a very tight geographical area that people will come to use the supervised injection sites. What's the specific issue that you see with putting a site in a place where there's already open-air drug use on the streets?
Well, I think once they leave, they're going to still be intoxicated or, on the effects of such drugs. And then what do they do after that? And specifically in the Capitol, it's already a dangerous place down there. And this is going to make it even more dangerous. We've had aides actually get mugged and pistol whipped down there, and this is only going to add to that problem.
So when you say add to that problem, I think that's interesting, and that's something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. It seems that you're suggesting that supervised injection sites will cause more drug use. Do you believe that to be true?
I do.
Why do you believe that?
Well, it's enabling it. So you're actually giving them a free place to come in and shoot up. It's kind of the same thing we heard with these needle exchanges when they first came out. It was supposed to clean up the problem and make sure that no needles were left around. Well, since this needle exchange site's been put at the Capitol, we've seen more. I've seen needles. The State Patrol actually has to patrol the grounds to pick up syringes. So it's only made the problem worse, and I think instead of enabling people, we should give them some treatment.
It's your belief that the needle exchange next to the Capitol has resulted in more needles being found there. Not increased drug use, but the fact that the needle exchange is there.
Correct. I think I think it's increased drug use, but it's also more needles because they're readily available right there by the Capitol. And I think some of the things we should do instead is let's look at the stigma on this. Why don't we actually expand the ability for therapists to actually do mobile apps so people don't have to worry about going into a therapist office and maybe possibly getting seen. I'm giving them some more tools so that maybe they have some more prescribing authority for other medications that solve withdrawal symptoms instead of just enabling the actual legal use itself.
Is there anything that health practitioners could tell you that could cause you to change your mind about these sites?
It's possible. I mean, the ones I've talked to, though, again, especially the therapists and stuff that I speak to, they all tell me that treatment's the answer, not enablement.
Explain why you think that this should not be a local control issue. So say, if Denver wants one of these sites, Denver gets one of these sites. If Castle Rock doesn't want a site, they don't get a site.
Well, I think what we see in Vancouver specifically is it expands and creates a huge issue within that local area, but then you also see a lot of crime that happens beyond that scope of that area because people actually need to, well, they'll go commit crime so that they can afford to continue their habit. And again, I think we should go back to actually getting some treatment and lowering the stigma level instead of enabling the actual legal behavior itself.
So it's your belief that drug users who are using the supervised injection site will leave Denver, commit crimes to facilitate buying drugs, then return to use the site? That's what you're saying?
Quite possibly, or they'll use that site that's going to be what we've seen in Vancouver specifically too, is that's actually becomes a site where dealers can kind of congregate and find different clients. And so it only increases the drug use in Vancouver.
If you don't think that supervised injection sites are the way to reach people who are at the late stages of the disease of addiction, what do you suggest for those people who are truly at the end stage, or do you think they're beyond help?
Well, I think that we've actually done some different programs that increase mental health accesses in Colorado. We should continue to work on that. And then, like I said, too, the actual giving the ability...
What does mental health access have to do with somebody who is a dedicated heroin user at the end stage of the disease?
Well, I think it's an addiction issue, and it's, again, the therapy is actually what's going to get them over the addiction itself. So
mental health therapy will get someone over a heroin addiction?
There's a lot of mental health providers that actually do addiction therapy. So it's, increasing those providers. I know in my district specifically, we have one of the largest Medicaid providers in the district. One of their largest services is addiction services. And so we need to expand that, but we can also use the new digital age to expand that access so that people have that access right away instead of having to actually go into a spot and be worried that they might be seen. So I think we can head it on early, but then that's also a solution for those at the final stages.
Mm-hmm. So just to be super clear on this, you're saying that you believe that mental health interventions are appropriate for people who are in the end stages of heroin addiction.
Correct, and if we actually expanded some of these therapists the ability to prescribe drugs that reduce the withdrawal symptoms, I think this would be helpful. So
we talked policy on this. I want to talk about the politics of it. So you floated the idea of recall elections against Democrats who support this idea. Similar, there were successful recalls of Democrats who supported gun control legislation in 2013. If you're talking recalls after the fact, does that mean that you know that you can't stop this at the legislature?
I'm willing to do whatever it takes to stop it. So that's just one of the tools that we have at our disposal to stop it. And I think that anyone who actually pushes legalized heroin injection sites, I think is way out of touch with the voters of Colorado.
Yesterday, Republican Senator Kevin Priola of Henderson told me he's going to be a co-sponsor on this legislation. Will you run a recall against your fellow Republican?
I don't know at this time, probably not, but I'm really disappointed to see that he is on this legislation. Obviously have strong feelings about it myself.
So explain to me why you would run a recall against a Democrat who supports the sites but not a Republican.
Well, I don't
other
know.
than just pure politics.
I don't even know who we would target. It would we'd have to actually see how the votes come down.
Mm-hmm. Well, you suggested that you would run recalls against Democrats, and you just told me you're not sure if you'd run one against a Republican. So I'm trying to figure out, other than party affiliation, what's the difference?
Well, I didn't say I wouldn't. So that's still at the disposal. I'd do whatever it takes to make sure this stops. And depending on the district and how many voters there has, the recall threshold to gather signatures is one of those things that we look at.
So the parallel between supervised injection sites and gun control as a wedge issue is kind of interesting, because certainly Democrats lost seats over gun control, but that gun control is still in place. So as you look back on 2013, was that a win for Republicans?
I think it was. I mean, it's still in place, but we got the message out, and this is the same thing. It's something that's wrong. It's bad for Colorado, so we got to do everything we can right now to stop this from happening.
Last night here, Democratic State Senator Brittany Petterson said that the idea of recalls was desperate and an attempt to deal with the national troubles that your party is facing.
No, that's not at all. It's a tool that we have that we could actually stop this from happening. And if it does happen, it's a way that we can actually roll back these policies.
Last question on that. It seems to me like perhaps the most likely way to stop this from happening is not at the legislature, but it's after the fact through the Justice Department. Obviously, the Justice Department does not look kindly on these sites at all. Have you or your colleagues been in touch with the feds trying to flag them to have them intervene here?
No, not specifically. We just heard what they said about the policy in general, but we haven't been in specific contact with them.
Gotcha. And last question for you. I know you're in the House. We asked we know you're in the House. We asked for the Senate leader to join us. Happy to have you here. Do you believe that there are Democrats in the Senate who oppose supervised injection sites and might vote it down there?
I really don't know, but in my heart, I hope that they can if they actually see this and do the research on it. And again, that's what I'm saying before we do this. Let's all go out there and take a trip. I'm willing to pay for my own trip out there and go see what happened in Vancouver and see if it's working and meet with people. But I think we should at least do that before we take this huge, drastic step.
All right. House Minority Leader Patrick Nebler with Castle Rock, thank you for coming on. Hope you'll come back to discuss this issue.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Subscribe to the Next YouTube channel for the best of Next and some other stuff.